Tonight, the trillion-dollar debate. Democrats on the Hill spar over trillions of dollars for a cradle-to-grave infrastructure plan, holding up another trillion-dollar bipartisan bill to fix the nation's roads and bridges. Plus, the Facebook whistleblower.
There is a pattern of behavior that I saw at Facebook, of Facebook choosing to prioritize its profits over people.
Blowing the lid off the social media giant's policies, a day after the website goes down. And the Great Resignation.
When you're faithfully pursuing God's will, He's not going to lead you astray.
God's path to a vocation amid a record pandemic quitting spree. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
President Biden on the road to sell his Build Back Better plan. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm Jenna Browder.
Good evening. I am John Jessup. President Biden in Michigan tonight, drumming up public support to give America's roads and bridges a much-needed upgrade.
But it's not just traditional infrastructure he wants. His twofold plan also includes what's being called human infrastructure, and that has Democrats divided, jeopardizing the president's domestic agenda.
CBN Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson reports on the ongoing negotiations in tonight's top story.
Democrats are now looking to pass both the infrastructure and social spending bills by the end of October. It's still unclear, however, whether progressive and centrist Democrats can reach a deal by then to get either bill across the finish line.
This is a process. We'll get it done.
The budget reconciliation price tag is the main issue holding up negotiations, with centrist Democrats wanting a $1.5 trillion cap, while progressives argue that's not nearly enough.
That's too small to get our priorities in. So it's going to be somewhere, between 1.5 and 3.5.
Progressive House Democrats are withholding support for the Senate-passed infrastructure bill until an agreement is reached on the larger spending package, delaying a much-needed legislative win for President Biden.
We're in the process of continuing to talk to all the parties and see what we can get done.
Far-left protesters are turning on the centrists, going as far as following Senator Kyrsten Sinema into a bathroom and using a kayak flotilla to surround Senator Joe Manchin's houseboat.
What are you going to do for the poor in West Virginia?
We're going to be working everything we can to create good opportunities.
And we need to tax the rich.
Oh, I agree with that.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, who wants to see a deal reached, also needs to bring Democrats together to raise the debt ceiling before the U.S. runs out of money to pay its bills come October 18th.
If Republicans want to vote to stop payments from going to Social Security recipients or veterans, then be my guest. But they ought to get out of the way and let the legislation pass the Senate.
Republicans want to force the party in power to raise the debt ceiling alone through the budget reconciliation process.
Democrats need to tackle the debt limit. We gave them a roadmap and 3 months' notice. I suggest that our colleagues get moving.
Leader Schumer argues it's too risky for Democrats to raise the debt ceiling through reconciliation because it might not get passed in time. If nothing is done by October 18th, the American people could see an unprecedented economic catastrophe. Reporting from Capitol Hill, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
All right, thank you, Abby. Well, the Democratic infighting over the multi-trillion-dollar price tag in the House comes amid a backdrop of pressure from 2 moderate Democrats in the Senate. Kyrsten Sinema from Arizona and Joe Manchin from West Virginia are central to passing a bill through a deadlocked Senate. Breaking with party leaders, Manchin will not commit to an October 31st deadline, resisting calls to budge on his $1.5 trillion price tag for the Democrats' social safety net package.
I'm more concerned about our nation and our country turning into more of an entitlement society versus a rewarding society. So there's a balance to be had here.
The senator is also firing a shot across the bow on abortion, telling reporters today that the Hyde Amendment, which prohibits taxpayer dollars for abortion, is a red line.
Well, for more now, we're here joined by California Democrat Ro Khanna. Congressman Khanna, welcome back to Faith Nation. It's always great to have you. You just heard Senator Manchin there making the red line on the Hyde Amendment, also talking about the high price tag on the reconciliation bill. Your thoughts?
We will get to a compromise. I was in a meeting with the president yesterday, and we said that we have to have good faith negotiations with Senator Manchin. As you know, the Hyde Amendment is the law of the land. I don't expect that reconciliation will repeal it, so I think we could get to a compromise there.
As you mentioned, you met with the president yesterday along with a group of other House progressives. Afterwards, the White House said there was agreement on what mattered most when it comes to the key priorities in the final legislation. That said, does that get you any closer to your moderate Democrat counterparts?
It did. I mean, what we agreed on is that the price tag had to come down. What we agreed on is that we had to sit down with Senator Manchin and negotiate something. What some of us said is reduce the number of years that these programs exist, and that will really help us get to consensus.
Congressman Khanna, critics are quick to pounce, suggesting if your caucus can't get this done with control of the White House, the Senate, and the House, on something with broad support like infrastructure, it shows that Democrats may not be able to govern, potentially risking, as Abby just reported, economic catastrophe when it comes to the debt ceiling.
Well, we're trying to do this without a single Republican vote when it comes to the debt ceiling, and I voted when Trump was president to increase the debt ceiling numerous times. So it's unfortunate that no Republican is willing to do that, but the Democrats will get it done, and I'm confident that we will pass the president's agenda. Again, it's a very slim majority, 50-50 Senate, only a 3-seat majority in the House. So it's difficult to do things without any Republican votes, but we're working very hard, and I'm confident we will deliver.
Congressman, progressives have seemed to gain a lot of control in this infrastructure debate. Unlike before, you have a prominent seat at the table, and you have the president's ear. Congressman, what does that say about the control of the Democratic Party and where it's heading? Is it becoming more progressive?
It is, and that's because people like progressive policies. They believe that every American should have the opportunity to go to preschool. They believe that we need child care help for families that need assistance raising kids. They believe we should have free community college so people can go get community college benefits. These are popular policies around the country, and that's what progressives have stood for.
Congressman, I know you supported the supplemental bill that ultimately provided $1 billion to fund Israel's Iron Defense Dome system. The opposition notably came mostly from the progressive wing of your caucus. That, along with a recent incident involving Vice President Kamala Harris, has sparked concerns about anti-Israeli sentiment possibly brewing among Democrats. I'd love to get you to weigh in on your thoughts there.
The Democratic Party still believes that Israel is an ally. The Iron Dome funding, which I supported, was for defensive proposition. I mean, it was to make sure that when you have Hamas rockets coming in, that civilians don't get killed. So I don't understand why anyone wouldn't be for that defensive technology in Israel. In Silicon Valley, Israel is a significant ally economically on innovation. And I've been critical of settlements, and I've been critical of some policies. I much more am with Shimon Peres or Yitzhak Rabin than I was with Netanyahu's ideology. But we have to recognize that Israel is an ally, and you can be critical of certain policies without undermining that fundamental alliance.
All right, Representative Ro Khanna of California, thank you so much. It's great to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, Facebook under fire. Did it knowingly profit off of tactics that harm children and potentially threaten democracy?
Facebook under fire. Lawmakers on Capitol Hill say the terrible truth about the social media giant is coming to light. This after a former employee turned whistleblower testified today.
Her conclusion that lawmakers need to hold Facebook accountable for putting profit over people. CBN's Brody Carter breaks down the company's research now under scrutiny and has an update from today's hearing.
Lawmakers are following the money after receiving research from Frances Haugen that shows the company puts children, public safety, privacy, and our democracy in harm's way in favor of the almighty dollar.
The company's leadership knows how to make Facebook and Instagram safer but won't make the necessary changes because they have put their astronomical profits before people.
Former employee turned whistleblower Frances Haugen pulling back the curtain on what happens at Facebook, calling on Congress to protect young users from the social media giant's dangerous tactics. She says Facebook consistently chose to prioritize profits despite knowing people were harmed, and some even died due to deceptive algorithms used to control what we see, including addicting and divisive content.
Not only does the company hide most of its own data, my disclosure has proved that when Facebook is directly asked questions as important as, how do you impact the health and safety of our children, they choose to mislead and misdirect.
Documents exposed by Haugen show the company's own research revealed the company knowingly marketing dangerous content regarding eating disorders and self-harm to children. 66% of teenage girls and 40% of teenage boys experience negative social comparisons. A significant number of kids and users in general experience negative or mental health problems based on use, and that Facebook actively targets children as young as 8 to consume social media.
When we realized big tobacco was hiding the harms it caused, the government took action. When we figured out cars were safer with seatbelts, the government took action. And when our government learned that opioids were taking lives, the government took action. I implore you to do the same here.
The hearing coincides with a power outage Monday that cut off more than 1 billion Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp platforms worldwide. While the company blamed the blackouts on configuration changes to key routers, some lawmakers raised questions about the timing, given today's potentially damaging hearing.
The only way we can move forward and heal Facebook is we first have to admit the truth. Like, the way we'll have reconciliation and we can move forward is by first being honest and declaring moral bankruptcy.
Haugen says Facebook deleted some 600,000 underage Facebook accounts, but says it's impossible to track the number of kids under 13 using the platform, since many of them use their addiction to lie to their parents and create a secret account. I'm Brody Carter, CBN News.
Thank you, Brody. And here with us now, Donna Rice-Hughes, the president and CEO of Enough is Enough. Donna, thank you for joining us this evening and welcome. So Frances Haugen, we just heard her, she drew a comparison today between social media giants and the big tobacco industry. What do you make of that comparison? Do you think it's fair?
It is fair. It's more than fair. And we've seen this, you know, I've been working to protect children on the internet since 1994. So first of all, give her a big shout out and an applause, because she's a hero in my mind. And it's important to get this inside data into the open. This is very, very key. We've seen anecdotally these things happening over the years. And so, yes, it's absolutely true. Hook them young and keep them on for life.
She absolutely popped the lid off so that we can get a peek into Facebook and its practices. In her whistleblower testimony today, Haugen also said Instagram's about bodies and comparing lifestyles, and that by Facebook's own research, it's distinctly worse than any other platform as it relates to teens and young women. Donna, your thoughts on that?
Well, it's very true. It's very toxic for teen girls. We know that in particular, tween girls, 12 to 14 years, when they're starting to go through puberty, they're particularly vulnerable to body shaming, to comparison, to peer pressure, to bullying. I remember that season in my life as one of the worst. It was the Mean Girls on Steroids season. And we also know, of course, as your report mentioned, that kids younger than 13 can get onto these platforms, all of them, including Facebook. And so Facebook has known this. They have absolutely no age verification technology in place. This technology is available. They can use it and they can turn it on. So it's not just a matter of kicking off those kids that are under 13. They should never be on there to begin with, which goes back to the very issue here that Instagram was exploring Instagram for kids. Well, they can't even keep the kids 13 to 18 safe, nor do they have parental control tools for that age group.
Yeah. Donna, so do you think kids can self-regulate?
They absolutely cannot. That's why God gave them parents. That is the parent's role. There is a parent's role, but even now, and most of these social media platforms, particularly Facebook and Instagram, they are not educating parents. That's why groups like ours exist, nor are they equipping and empowering them, the parent, to be the first line of defense. I spent a lot of time just today just to see if they've done anything different. The only way to protect your child is, as a parent, is you've got to set up their profile yourself. And if the child sets it up, which is typically what they're doing, you can't even get a questionable picture or something that invades their privacy taken down, because it's not your profile. Parent, it's your kid's profile, and the kid has to do it. So they've got a lot to do.
Donna Rice Hughes with Enough is Enough. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for the work of your organization.
Can I say one thing? We've got a petition on our website at enough.org. We'd love for people to sign it. It's going straight to Mark Zuckerberg.
All right. Donna, thank you. Good to see you. And when we come back, they're calling it the Great Resignation, why workers are quitting in droves amid the pandemic.
And welcome back. The White House is losing a major player in the fight against COVID-19. The director of National Institutes of Health making the surprising announcement that he is stepping down. Dr. Francis Collins will wrap up his tenure at NIH at the end of this year after leading the organization in the fight against the coronavirus. In an interview with CBN News, Collins said that as a scientist and a Christian, he views the vaccine he helped to develop as, quote, an answer to prayers. Well, some of us have lived through the Great Depression. Most of us lived through the Great Recession. And now there's the Great Resignation.
That's what they're calling it. Millions of Americans are leaving their jobs in record-setting fashion. Once again, here's Brody Carter.
If the pandemic has caused you to want to quit your job, you're not alone.
I think the pandemic reveals our mortality. So whenever you come close to death, whether it's sickness in some form or a near-death experience, life gets really clear.
One clear part is an upside-down workforce that some refer to as the Great Resignation. That's because a record quitting spree resulted in 4 million people leaving their jobs in April, another 4 million in June. Almost 50% of American workers say the pandemic has led them to reevaluate their job choice.
Who am I? What's my identity? Where do I fit in? What's my sense of belonging to some sort of community or purpose? And then what am I here to do?
Barna Group researchers and pastors are working side by side, examining the ebb and flow from the workplace, churches, and universities. It turns out 4 out of 5 adults believe life's ultimate goal is happiness.
It's not a sustaining framework to just chase after happiness. That's so circumstantial. I think what was interesting is that practicing Christians are actually even more likely to chase after happiness as their primary aim.
Well, focusing on career data and a shifting workforce, Barna's Vocation Project also found something troubling happening in the church.
We've seen a drop-off of about a third of Christians have really disengaged with their church community. And we believe that a lot of them are kind of what I'll call feeding their faith or nurturing their faith in other ways. We just don't know exactly where they're going to land.
Senior fellow Brooke Hempel spearheads research helping people discover their calling.
Only about a quarter of Christians are the ones who kind of say, I see very clearly how my work and life fit together, my calling in life.
To make that connection easier, Barna is reintroducing its one-of-a-kind online assessment called True Motivate. Think of it as a Myers-Briggs or an Enneagram, but with a focus on what you're created to do, as opposed to what you do well.
Only 1 out of every 10 working adults are purpose-oriented in their work. And so the vast majority of us are going to work without a sense of purpose.
You are twice as likely to be highly satisfied in your life if you're highly satisfied in your work as a Christian. So there's a direct correlation between satisfaction in work and satisfaction in life.
Pastor Tim Yee wrote Finding Your True Center as a 6-week Bible study using True Motivate as a bridge connecting work and faith.
So Finding Your True Center is really just a biblical journey looking at what does the Bible tell us about how we are to work and how we are to show up in the world, to be on mission, on God's mission.
They've found when we align God's true calling for our lives, which is to glorify Him and bless others. We are blessed in return.
But seek the peace and prosperity of the city in which you live. For if it prospers, for if it is blessed, if it is shalomed, then I'm going to shalom and bless you. And then you read verse 11. For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans to shalom you. So our shalom is directly connected to us overflowing God's love towards others.
When you are faithfully pursuing God's will, He's not going to lead you astray, and He'll reveal that a step at a time.
Stephanie Shackelford's book, You on Purpose, aims to evaluate the future of work. And while many are opting for happiness in remote work, a better paycheck, or even a new career, she believes the workforce can find healing by looking to the one who created it.
The Spirit will guide you and lead you, and oftentimes there's not, a right or wrong choice to make in your calling. It's really just a choice, and we have the freedom to decide. And if you're doing that in community and with the Spirit's guidance, you can't go wrong.
True Motivate is an assessment tool 60 years in the making, helping the professional world find its true calling. And what better time than now, in the chaos created by the pandemic, to dig deeper and discover God's purpose for your life. Brody Carter, CBN News.
Coming up, the longest-running TV series on the world's oldest national broadcaster earns a royal celebration. We explain next.
Your heart.
And finally tonight, the BBC's longest-running TV series is celebrating almost 60 years and, John, almost 3,000 episodes.
That's right, Jenna. Songs of Praise attracts viewers throughout the United Kingdom every week in worship. With one pretty well-known viewer, I think most of us all know who she is, who likes to tune in as well. In a pre-recorded message for its anniversary, Britain's Queen Elizabeth congratulated all those involved in the broadcast, saying the program shows Christianity as a living faith. I love that hymn, by the way.
What's that?
I love that hymn.
Yeah, beautiful. It is. It's alive and vibrant. It's nice to see the Queen recognize that.
Absolutely. Thanks for watching Faith Nation.
Have a great night.